What would you think if I told you that silence, the act of withdrawing, of stepping away without a word, could become the most powerful weapon in a woman's arsenal? Imagine this. You walk away, leaving a man in a void of your absence, and yet, as time passes, he finds himself haunted by the very echo of your silence. It's not the words you didn't say, but the space you left behind that he can never fill. It's not the drama, not the confrontation, but the stillness that forces him to confront himself. And that is where the true power lies. Carl Jung, the brilliant Swiss psychiatrist, understood the depths of the unconscious, how the ego, that part of us that seeks to control and define, often clashes with the deeper, shadowed aspects of the psyche. In this space between what is seen and what is hidden, a woman's silence becomes a mirror that reflects not only the man's desires, but also his fears, his inadequacies, and his projections. The woman who walks away without explanation does not just leave him physically, she leaves him to grapple with his own shadow. And in that confrontation, the man is changed forever. He will never forget the woman who left him in silence, because in that silence, he is forced to face the parts of himself that he has long avoided. When a woman withdraws emotionally, when she steps back from the drama and the noise of a relationship, she becomes a powerful symbol of what is absent in the man's psyche, a reminder of what he has failed to acknowledge about himself. Men, driven by ego and the desire for validation, often find themselves trapped in a cycle of pursuit, needing to possess what they cannot truly understand. They believe that control over a woman, over love, can fill the void within them. But a woman who steps into her own power, who withdraws her energy, does not offer herself to the man on a silver platter. She leaves him in the uncomfortable silence of his own self-reflection. This silence is not simply a void. It is not empty. It is charged with meaning, with unspoken emotion, with unanswered questions. It creates a space where the man's ego cannot find satisfaction, where his need for validation and control is left unfulfilled. And this unfulfilled desire becomes the root of obsession. The more a man cannot have something, the more he craves it. The more a woman withholds himself, not out of malice, but out of self-respect, the more the man becomes fixated on her. He will replay every moment of the relationship in his mind, trying to understand what went wrong, what he missed, what he could have done differently. But he will never have the answer. The silence remains, and it will haunt him endlessly. This is where the concept of the anima comes in. Jung's anima represents the unconscious feminine in the male psyche, the aspects of a man's emotional and spiritual being that are repressed or denied. A woman who steps into her own power, who embraces her silence, becomes the embodiment of this anima, something the man unconsciously seeks to understand but can never fully control or possess. The anima is both an ideal and a mystery. It is the part of him that longs for integration but also fears it. When a woman walks away, she becomes the embodiment of this unconscious force, the part of him that is still unclaimed, still in shadow. His obsession, then, is not about the woman herself. It is about the parts of himself he has yet to embrace, and the more she steps away, the more he is forced to confront them. There is an undeniable power in emotional detachment. To detach is not to dismiss or disregard, but to stand in one's own truth with unwavering certainty. When a woman chooses to walk away without explanation, without an outpouring of words, she does not just make a statement to the man. She makes a statement to herself. She asserts that she will not be drawn into his emotional drama, that she is whole within herself and requires nothing from him to feel validated. This, of course, unsettles him. It forces him to reckon with his own emotional dependence, to face the uncomfortable reality that he has not yet learned how to love without control. The more he tries to chase her, to pull her back into the noise and the chaos of his own ego, the more he realizes that she is not something to be possessed. She is not a puzzle to be solved. She is a mirror, reflecting his own inner conflict. And this is why he will never forget her. The woman who leaves him in silence becomes the woman who haunts him, the one he cannot reach, cannot fully understand. She is the embodiment of everything he desires but cannot claim. And in this unavailability, in this emotional distance, he is forced to confront the limitations of his own ego, the fragility of his own sense of self-worth. Silence, then, is not weakness, it is strength. It is a strength born of knowing one's own worth, of refusing to be drawn into the frantic dance of neediness and validation. When a woman steps back, she creates a space for the man to either rise to meet her or fall back into the shadow of his own projections. His obsession is his journey, his need to understand what he cannot control, and this journey will forever be marked by the silence she leaves behind. In the end, it is the woman who understands the power of silence, the power of emotional detachment, who will leave a man changed.
He will never forget her. Not because she was perfect, not because she was flawless, but because she showed him what it means to be whole, to be emotionally free, and to stand firm in one's own truth. And in that silence, in that absence, she becomes the woman who haunts him, not through manipulation or games, but through her unwavering sense of self. As time stretches on, the silence only grows louder in his mind. The longer she remains distant, the deeper the echo of her absence reverberates. His mind, once filled with certainty, is now plagued with questions. Questions that will never have answers. Not because the answers do not exist, but because he is not yet ready to face them. He will try to fill the void, to distract himself with new pursuits, new relationships, but nothing will ever quiet the memory of the woman who left him in silence. His attempts to move on will feel like trying to outrun a shadow, always there, never completely gone. This is where the real power lies. The woman who leaves in silence does not need to explain herself. She does not need to justify her actions or her decisions. Her silence is not a punishment, it is a revelation. It reveals to him the parts of himself that he has ignored or suppressed, the vulnerable parts, the parts that need healing. The more he tries to hold on to her, to pull her back into the noise of his own ego, the more he realizes that she is not an object to be possessed, not a piece of his puzzle to complete. She is an awakening. She is a force that calls him to grow, to evolve, to confront the depths of his own unconscious. Jung's concept of the shadow reveals the parts of ourselves that we deny or repress. These are the aspects of our psyche that we refuse to acknowledge, but they are always there, lurking in the background, influencing our thoughts and actions. When a woman leaves a man in silence, she forces him to confront his shadow. He cannot escape the questions that arise in his mind. What did he miss? Why did she walk away? What does this say about him? These questions are not just about her, they are about him. They are the key to his own self-awareness, to his own growth. The man's obsession with her is not merely about losing her. It is about the confrontation with the parts of himself that he has not yet integrated. His obsession is a reflection of his own need to evolve, to become whole. In his attempt to understand why she left, he is forced to reckon with his own inadequacies, his own emotional limitations. He will revisit the moments they shared, replaying every conversation, every interaction, trying to find the key to unlocking her silence. But what he does not realize is that the key to understanding her silence lies within him. His obsession is not about her, it is about him. It is about the parts of himself that he has yet to confront. In his pursuit to understand, he will be forced to look inward. The more he tries to control the situation, the more he realizes that he cannot control her, nor can he control his own emotions. This realization, this surrender to the unknown, is what leads to transformation. He must either face the uncomfortable truth of his own vulnerabilities or continue to chase an idealized version of her, forever haunted by the shadow of his own ego. But it is in this process of confrontation, of facing his own shadow, that he begins to grow. He may not fully understand what she represents, but he will feel the call to evolve. The woman who leaves him in silence has created the space for his transformation. She has forced him to reckon with the parts of himself that he has been too afraid to face. And in doing so, she has become a catalyst for his individuation, the process by which he integrates the unconscious aspects of himself and becomes whole.
Jung's concept of individuation is central to the idea that personal growth arises from the integration of the unconscious into the conscious self. When a man is confronted with the silence of a woman who has chosen to step away, he is given the opportunity to embark on his own journey of individuation. His obsession with her is a symptom of this journey. It is a sign that he has been awakened to the need for self-exploration, for self-discovery. The longer she remains silent, the more his obsession becomes an invitation for growth. The silence is not a rejection, it is an invitation to go deeper, to confront the parts of himself that he has long neglected. And in this journey of self-discovery, he may come to realize that the woman who left him in silence was never truly the object of his obsession. She was merely a reflection of the parts of himself that he needed to integrate, the parts that he had been too afraid to face. And the truth is, once he has faced these parts of himself, once he has undergone the transformation that the woman's silence has forced him to confront, he will no longer be the same. He will no longer be driven by the need for validation or the desire to control. He will have gained a deeper understanding of himself, and in this understanding, he will find peace. The woman who left him in silence will no longer haunt him, because he will have learned the lessons that her absence taught him. He will have learned to be whole within himself. The woman who knows her worth does not need to chase, she chooses. And in her choosing, she becomes the force that shapes her own destiny, the force that forces those around her to evolve and grow. She is not a woman who plays games. She is a woman who stands firm in her own truth, and in doing so, she becomes the catalyst for transformation, not just in the man who chases her, but in herself as well.
As the man wrestles with his obsession, he begins to realize that the woman who left him in silence is not merely a figure from his past. She has become a mirror to his soul, reflecting not just his desires, but his deepest fears, those parts of himself that he had tucked away, unwilling to face. His fixation on her, then, is no longer about wanting her. It is about wanting to understand the parts of himself that she has illuminated in the darkness. Jung's theory of projection reveals this dynamic perfectly. The ego, desperate to maintain its sense of control, projects its own unconscious contents onto others. When a man is confronted with a woman who embodies the very aspects of his own unconscious, his anima, the feminine energy within him, he sees in her everything he longs for, but also everything he fears. He becomes obsessed with her because, in her, he is attempting to possess and understand what is unpossessable, what is outside the control of the ego. But what the man does not realize is that in his pursuit of her, he is simply chasing after a reflection of himself. The silence she leaves behind becomes the catalyst for his awakening. It is as if she is calling him to step into his own shadow, to confront the unresolved parts of himself that he had been avoiding. This confrontation is not easy, it is uncomfortable and painful, but it is necessary for growth. The longer he obsesses, the more he must face the uncomfortable truths about his own psyche. And the more he confronts these truths, the more he begins to shed the layers of his ego that have kept him bound. The obsession he feels will eventually lead him to a crossroads. He can either continue down the path of endless pursuit, forever chasing after the idealized image of a woman who reflects his unconscious desires, or he can face the deeper reality that he must turn inward. The woman who left him in silence did not abandon her. She left him with a gift, an invitation to look within and explore the parts of himself that he had neglected. In this silence, she has created the space for him to discover his true self, to reconcile with the parts of his psyche that he had rejected. But this is not a transformation that happens overnight. It is a slow, painful process of self-discovery, one that requires him to look beyond the surface and dig into the depths of his unconscious. The longer he holds on to his obsession, the longer he remains fixated on her, the more he is forced to face the aspects of himself that he has ignored. The obsession begins to shift from being about her to being about him. The man who once chased her now finds himself chasing after the truth of who he is.
And in this pursuit, he begins to understand that the woman who left him was never the source of his obsession. She was merely a catalyst, a guide who pointed him toward the shadow within himself, the part of him that had been calling out for integration. As he faces this shadow, he becomes more whole. He no longer needs to project his desires onto the unattainable woman. He no longer needs to chase after something outside of himself. This is the moment of individuation, the process by which a person integrates the unconscious into their conscious self. Jung believed that individuation is the path to wholeness, to becoming the fullest version of oneself. And it is in the silence of the woman's absence that the man begins his own journey of individuation. He is no longer haunted by the need to possess her because he realizes that the power he sought outside himself was always within him. The obsession dissolves, replaced by a deeper understanding of himself. The woman who left him in silence does not return to him as a prize to be won, as a figure to be conquered. Instead, she remains a symbol of the deep inner work he has done. She becomes the quiet force that propelled him toward his own transformation, the catalyst that helped him awaken to his true self. And once he has integrated this transformation, once he has reconciled with the parts of himself that he had once denied, he will no longer be the same man who once obsessed over her. The truth is, he will never forget her, not because of what she did or didn't do, but because she gave him the gift of self-awareness. She led him to the deepest parts of his soul, where he had to confront the shadow of his own ego. And in this confrontation, he learned to love himself, not in the way he loved the woman, but in a deeper, more profound way. He learned that true love comes not from possession, but from self-acceptance. For the woman who left him, there is no need for closure. She does not need to return to explain herself or provide answers. Her silence is the closure. Her absence is the transformation. In walking away, she has given him the gift of becoming whole, the gift of individuation. And when he finally realizes this, when he finally understands the power she held over him, he will no longer be the same. He will no longer be chasing an idealized version of her. He will have found the version of himself that he was always meant to be. The woman who knows her worth does not chase, she chooses. And in her choosing, she becomes the force that shapes her own destiny, the force that brings others, especially the man who once obsessed over her, into the light of their own transformation.